Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another edition of One Plus One, your place for inconvenient truth telling and myth busting. It's another of our All Things Africa edition. We're continuing to explore the North African region, and today we'll be looking at the history and current affairs of Morocco, and who better to teach us about this African nation or any African country than our returning champion, history teacher, and our historical guide, Abayomi Azikiwe of Pan-African Newswire and frequent contributor to Black Agenda Reports. Abayomi, as everyone should know, is an independent journalist and historian, anti-imperialist campaigner, and all-around leftist. And always, before we start, a reminder to our audience to please share widely all of One Plus One's content, past and present episodes, our playlists, and help us overcome the far-right algorithms and the dominant monopoly Western corporate state media and pseudo-leftist websites have in the social media world by sharing our content. Share us across social media and email, and please donate if you can to One Plus One at our PayPal. And if people are having trouble and would prefer an alternative form to donations, then please get in touch with me at Youri@gmail. And sometimes Facebook blocks my ability to share One Plus One. So again, please share widely. It helps the show immensely, and it's our only way of overcoming colonial, pro-imperial, sexist, heteronormative, racist media. So on to the topic at hand. Abayomi, Morocco. So as always, tell us what was Morocco like before Spanish colonization? What was and then what was the yes. So because Morocco has been colonized by both Spain and France, I'm going to be breaking our questions into first talking about Spanish colonialism before we talk about French colonialism. So tell us, what was Morocco like before Spanish colonization, and what were the conditions of the people during Spanish rule over Morocco?
The today's Kingdom of Morocco has a long, quite extensive history in regard to the human settlements and human presence. Has been traced back some 315,000 years. So this area has a very, very protracted historical trajectory. In regard to evidence of this, 15,000 years ago, there was a burial site which was discovered in recent years, which indicate that they were very much a part of the human evolution as it relates to the Paleolithic, meaning the Stone Age, as well as the Neolithic, which is the last phase of the Stone Age. There were human settlements there, and people were building their own societies long, long before the intervention of several European powers. For example, ancient Rome had conquered areas in Northwest Africa, and they had a presence there going back to the approximately 332 BC, and they became an outpost of the ancient Romans. Yet during this period, there were rebellions on the part of the indigenous people of Morocco. The country has also been a part of a wave of human presence going back thousands upon thousands of years. There was a farming community that came into the country from the so-called Iberian Peninsula. This is long before the rise of Islam, as well as the reestablishment of Christian hegemony in the Iberian Peninsula. So they had been involved in the Roman Empire, which extended to the Northwest Africa region. And as I mentioned before, there was resistance to the ancient Romans in Northwest Africa. Some people who were already in Morocco, who could be said to be indigenous to the area, or who were people who had been a part of the human migration into the area from the Iberian Peninsula, and then later, of course, from West Asia. Some supported the Romans, others resisted the Roman domination. And of course, the Roman Empire began to disintegrate during the Christian era. It had a lot to do with the adoption of Christianity as a state religion in Rome, and that took place under Claudius and other Roman empire leaders, yet they began to fragment and disintegrate by the 5th and 6th century during the Christian era. And of course, after that, well, even before that, there was consolidation of the various ethnic groups in the area, the Berbers, the Phoenicians, also the indigenous Africans, intermingled, and today they can constitute a distinct genetic makeup of the people in Morocco. The oldest, of course, struggles that took place for the independence of Morocco happened under Roman imperial rule. When that dissolved, later on, there was the influx of the Islamic caliphates, the Umayyads, and others. But prior to that, even, we had the rise of the Empire of Carthage. Elements in Morocco were part of that empire, which in fact waged wars against the Roman Empire and even took over for a short period of time. And all of these wars contributed to the decline of the Roman civilization. As we mentioned, they had adopted Christianity as a state religion. This was some 300 years after Christianity had been founded in Egypt around 70 AD. The first Christian church was established there around 70 AD by St. Mark. So, in that regard, Christianity, in my opinion, could not be labeled as a Western religion, not in terms of its origin. It originated in North Africa, and there are references to it even in the so-called King James Version of the Bible, which was published in 1652 under the British monarchy. Nonetheless, the Muslim intervention began to occur during the 7th and the 8th centuries. It was a wave of various caliphates that came into the area, and the Berbers, who that label is given to the people in Northwest Africa, resisted. Some did resist the intervention of the Muslim caliphates. Yes. Others accepted Islam. So it was that division between those who accepted Islam and those who resisted the Islamic State. So these are some of the elements that were very much present over a period of thousands of years. Talking about the discovery of human settlements, evidence of human settlements going back 315,000 years. Then, of course, other developments related to the ancient kingdom of Carthage, later and before even the intervention of Rome, the collapse of the Roman Empire, the rise of Islam, and of course the conflicts that arose during the centuries are very significant as well. Now, the various Muslim caliphates had expansionist aims. Around the 8th century, 7th and 8th century, there was the intervention in the so-called Iberian Peninsula, and the Muslims from Northwest Africa controlled that area for about 7 centuries, up until the conclusion of the 15th century, when they were forced out by the Christian kingdoms during that particular time period. After that, there was the intervention of Portugal, which attempted to set up settlements along the northeastern coast of Africa. And that happened. And then after that, there was later the intervention of Spain, and then later France. So the country was subjected to European foreign domination during 2 periods: the period of the Roman Empire, later the period of the Ottoman Empire, and then, of course, the period of the initial phase of the Atlantic slave trade, which laid the basis for European colonialism, which was consolidated in the 19th century.
You know, before we talk about how Morocco became a French colony. Let's let's go a little bit back to when Spain colonized Morocco, because it's quite fascinating, and it's always hilarious to see people trying to contain their racism, their Orientalism, their
Yes.
Islamophobia when it comes to talking about Morocco and Spain. So clarify for us. So once upon a time, Islamic empires that came from that what's considered modern day Morocco did colonize Spain and so forth. And I think these were people known as the Moorish Empire and so forth like that that actually contributed a lot to Spain's culture, the different ways when it comes to learning, like geometry,
Yes.
science, and so forth like that, ancient medicine, and so forth like that. The Moorish Empire did contribute to that when they when what's considered modern day Spain and Portugal were part of that. And then, if my memory is well, when when the Western Christian empires and so forth rose, they later sort of kicked the Moorish people, the Moorish empires out of Spain, and then the Spanish Inquisition is somewhere in there. So Spain being a Roman Catholic country alongside Portugal, but we're talking specifically about Spain. That's how that rises, and then Spain later starts colonizing the world, engages in its own forms of settler colonialism and so forth, and then for a while, Spain then kind of reversed and then sort of colonized Morocco for a period of time. Am I correct in my understanding of
Yes,
history when I say all of that?
exactly. And they did. In fact, even today, there are two territories uh, that Morocco lays claim to, independent of the Western Sahara, that Spain today still says is part of the Spanish territory. So there is that conflict with Spain as well. And it's not just a question of the Western Sahara, which we'll talk about later, but Spain and Morocco, they still have territorial disputes in relationship to two island territories between Europe and Northwest Africa.
And what were some of the I'm sure that there is some truth that a lot of these Islamic empires were not nice and whatnot, and if people want to use the word backwards, I'm pretty sure there were a lot of backward practices and a lot of, I mean, empires are never, benevolent and stuff like that. But that being said, what were some of the positive stuff that that Morocco contributed to Spain? Because it's kind of wild when you hear Europeans and Spaniards talk about their culture. They really do not want to give any sorts of compliments
No,
to Black African culture, to North African culture, to Islamic culture, in as being part of it. They all just want to have this racist, Orientalist, Islamophobic view of it. I'm very curious your yeah I'm very curious your response to that.
well, in regard to architecture, there's a distinctive Moorish architectural designs, mathematics, literature, philosophy. All of these elements contributed even to today's Iberian Peninsula culture, being Spain, parts of Portugal, as well as France. So, yes, they did. And what was really interesting about the whole process is that the racism causes them to deny even the Moorish presence inside the country. And even beyond that, I was watching a news report last night on the role of the Africans in Spanish history, going back to the Atlantic slave trade, that their presence is still there. There are still signs of the African presence there, which is by and large denied by the modern Spanish system. even the historical documentation of it often excludes what Africans contributed. Even after the Spanish Inquisition and the driving out of the Islamic societies, the caliphates out of the Iberian Peninsula, and the beginning of the Atlantic slave trade during the 15th century. So a lot of this has been erased, not only from Spain, but other Western European countries and the United Kingdom. So yes, they did have an impact, a positive impact, although we're not painting them as paragons of virtue. We're just saying that all of these civilizations, whether it's the ancient Greeks, Romans, the ancient Egyptians, the Sudanese, the Ethiopians, the Babylonians, and others,
Persians, yeah.
Persian
Chinese, yeah.
civilization and so forth, they were advanced in comparison to what you see or did see during the so-called Middle Ages in Europe, which was categorized by a lot of superstition, internal conflict, as well as infectious disease. You know, even in the 14th century, there was the so-called Black Plague, which erupted across Europe. It killed perhaps half of the population there. There was another one that arose in the 17th century, which killed a lot of people. So obviously, the European elites during that particular time period felt it necessary to go outside of Europe in order to expand and to increase the economic and political status of these European societies during the so-called Middle Ages and even after the Middle Ages and the so-called period of Enlightenment, and also the Victorian, so-called Victorian era in Britain,
Yeah.
and the whole period, the post Renaissance period in Europe. So yes, you cannot deny the contributions of Islamic civilizations and other non-Western civilizations in the development of Europe.
Yeah. Thanks so much for saying that because it is quite and I think even in my own education and I just find looking back on my own education that a lot of my teachers also minimize completely the contributions
Yes.
of Morocco, much of Africa, but specifically like Morocco and so forth. I mean, there's little bits of like compliments compliments that are that are given
Mhm.
towards Egypt, but mostly it's just strictly focusing on the wonders of ancient Greece and ancient Rome, and then yeah, the Middle Ages were bad, but then later comes the Renaissance, and then just kind of like often just minimizing just how even awful the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romes are, and then just and then just again very much minimizing a lot of the positive contributions when it comes to culture and whatnot that places like Morocco and I would even say the entire continent of Africa and much of Asia does. So thank you very much for all the
Exactly.
stuff
And
you
even
said.
among the Europeans themselves, for example, the Vandals, who it is said originated, they were Germanic people, but they also had a presence in what is considered today Poland, invaded the Roman Empire during the 6th century and caused a lot of damage there. They also intervened in Northwest Africa as well, and that contributed along with the resistance that existed among the indigenous people to the weakening and eventual collapse of the Roman Empire.
Now, talk to us a bit more. I'm going to combine these questions
Go
together.
ahead.
So talk to us a bit more about how Spain ended up colonizing their once colonizers, the Moroccans. So how did Spain end up colonizing Morocco? What were the conditions of the people like? And then how did France end up colonizing Morocco? And what were the conditions of the people like when France colonized Morocco?
Yes, both Spain and then later France, noting, the previous advanced civilization, the natural resources that existed, the strategic geopolitical positioning of Northwest Africa had designs on this region of the continent. Spain initially came in and they attempted to colonize Morocco, and they did set up forts and trading outposts in various areas along the Atlantic as well as the Mediterranean coast in today's modern Kingdom of Morocco. Later, the French also had designs on that area, and there was competition and conflict between France and Morocco over control of the territory. During the period of the Berlin Conference, 1884 and 1885, they came to some agreement over how the area should be carved up, and that did not prevent the resistance that continued to take place on the part of the Moroccans against both the French as well as the Spanish. And that, of course, had a role to play during the late 18th century of separation from Britain. The Kingdom of Morocco, interestingly enough, was the first entity to recognize the American colonists as an independent force. And even after the conclusion of the so-called Revolutionary War, which was fought between 1775 and 1783, when a treaty was signed to relinquish control of the 13 colonies to themselves, and that was later resulted in the formation of the United States of America. The United States signed a treaty, a friendship treaty with the Kingdom of Morocco in the late 1780s. And this treaty, this friendship treaty, still remains today. So this perhaps can explain the role of the United States in today's Moroccan affairs. For example, Morocco's refusal to relinquish control of the Western Sahara and hold a referendum that was mandated by the United Nations in 1991. But the United States has always been opposed to the holding of this referendum. And today, in fact, at the end of Trump's previous administration, he denounced the agreement and recognized Morocco's full control over the Western Sahara. So this can explain the fact that the United States is still backing the Kingdom of Morocco against the people of the Western Sahara, today known as the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, which we talked about extensively last week. And other European colonial powers have backed away from calling for this referendum that was supposed to be held in 1991. We're talking about 34 years ago. And today, the war is still going on, but we can talk about that later on in this segment.
Yeah, but before we talk about Moroccan independence, just talk to us about what were the conditions of what were the conditions of the Moroccan people like when they were a colony of Spain and later, of Spain and later France?
Well, the conditions were bad. The people were exploited. They were treated as second-class citizens. And this, of course, prompted rebellions on the part of the people in Morocco during the early 20th century when Spain had set up Morocco as a protectorate and France was working along the same lines. There were huge rebellions which erupted in 1904 against Spain and France. And these rebellions were eventually put down. Nonetheless, they had an impact in illustrating that the Moroccan people were by no means satisfied with the colonial system that had been established by both France and Spain. And of course, during that particular time period, under the Spanish protectorate, which was really a colonization process, they recruited Moroccans into the Spanish military, into the Spanish administrative apparatus. There were Moroccans that fought with Spain and France during various imperialist military adventures. For example, World War I. There were Moroccans that fought alongside the French during that war. In the Spanish Civil War between 1936 and 1939, There were Moroccans that were recruited into the Spanish Nationalist Army, which blocked any type of democratic process inside the country. And they were supported by the Third Reich. And eventually they were able to become dominant, during the late 1930s in what is known as the Spanish Civil War. So people, even from the United States, traveled there to fight with the Republican forces. Um, some were communists, some were anarchists, but they did not prevail over the Spanish National Army. And of course, the government of Franco remained in power all the way up until the 1970s. And we discussed that last week as well. Then in World War II, France had recruited Moroccans into their army, and they fought also on the side of France during World War II as well. But during World War II, 1943, the first real independence party was formed. The Istiklal Party was formed around 1943, and they were demanding independence for Morocco. And it was a long process between World War II and the 1950s that led to the independence of Morocco in March of 1956.
And when did and that's a perfect segue to this question. So when Morocco became independent from France, was it one of violent struggle or a peaceful transition? And then tell us how Morocco, which its history has always been one of kings and aristocracy, and with that, a plutocracy and various forms of capitalism, and then being more or less a colonial viceroy, first to Spain and then to France. So tell us how that system evolved and the socioeconomic legacy of the first king of Moroccan independence, Mohammed V, who ruled from August 14th, 1957 to February 26, 1961.
Yes, well, even prior to the independence in 1956, there was rebellion during the 1920s, between 1921 and 1926. It was a secular-led rebellion, and they established, for a period of 5 years, the Republic of RIF, and in a section of Morocco, they declared themselves independent. And of course, the French came in and tried to crush this effort. A secular, popular national independence movement that had declared itself independence for 5 years during the 1920s was rigorously opposed by France, and later the Spanish came in to assist the French. So combined, even though they had rivalries around control of territory in Morocco, they were successful in crushing the Republic of Rif in 1926. They even used chemical weapons, which is the first time it is noted, according to many historians, these weapons were used since the conclusion of World War I. So we know during World War I, mustard gas was used in the war, which resulted in the deaths and serious injuries of many people fighting on both sides of the First Imperialist War, which is called World War I. So that happened. They were able to crush this rebellion in 1926. But the rebellions continued, protests continued. There were mass demonstrations that erupted during the period of 1953. They exiled the king at that time, Hassan, because he was in favor of independence. He was sent to Madagascar, and the rebellions continued to the point that they had to re-invite him back into the country in 1955 to lead negotiations towards independence, which was realized in 1956.
Fascinating. And then tell us about and then tell us about the socioeconomic legacy of the first king, at least not the first king of Morocco, but the first king of Morocco as a independent country,
Independent.
Mohammed V, who ruled from August 14, 1957 to February 26, 1961.
There was limited reforms. The whole class system of the monarchy was maintained. And this caused a lot of discontent throughout various parts of the country, because even though they were independent, fundamentally, the economics and the social class structures were not transformed. So this led to a lot of discontent during that particular time period, particularly among the youth and students in that country. Then we have to keep in mind that in 1954, the Algerian National Liberation Front began their rebellion, their armed struggle against French domination of the country. Now, Morocco had played a role in terms of support for the Algerians, but later on, there were conflicting claims over territory in regard to Morocco and Algeria. And in fact, the Algerian National Liberation Front War, a key aspect of the victory of the FLN was the role of the Republic of Mali under Modibo Keita, who opened up what was called the Southern Front. And that was after independence in Mali in 1960. And the fact that they opened up that front to let the FLN fighters attack French outposts in Algeria led to the weakening of the French military forces and the eventual independence of Algeria in 1962. It was a long, protracted war. Estimated some 1 million Algerians were killed in that war, yet they did prevail. Even these settlers who were living in Algeria opposed Charles de Gaulle, when he sought to negotiate some type of solution. They even attempted to stage a coup d'etat against de Gaulle, which failed. So yes, it was a very long and protracted war. And in the early 1960s, around 1963, after the independence of Algeria, there was an outbreak of conflict. Moroccan forces had intervened in Algeria in the so-called Sand War, and that was defeated, but it was defeated with the assistance of the Cuban internationalists who intervened as pilots and other military advisors and fighters, and they were able to defeat the Moroccan incursion in 1963. So this is an interesting development because the thing about Algeria is that under Ben Bella, he attempted to carry out a non-aligned position. And even the United States, under John F. Kennedy, claimed that they were in support of Algerian independence. But the reason why they were in favor of it was because they wanted to undermine French colonial authority in order to allow the United States to have more influence on these emerging independent African states. When Ben Bella came to the United States for a visit, he was invited by the Kennedy administration in 1963. He was told by top advisors in the State Department of the Kennedy administration that he should not go to Cuba. He had planned to visit Cuba after visiting the United States, and they told him that there was a plot to shoot down his plane by anti-Castro Cubans, so he should not travel to Cuba. But he disregarded that warning and did travel to Cuba without incident. So it just goes to show that the purported support for Algerian independence under Ben Bella and the FLN was a fraud because they really wanted Algeria in the U.S. imperialist camp. And that was the reason why they claimed to support the situation in Algeria. Now, John F. Kennedy, Sr., was in the U.S. Senate prior to taking the presidency after the 1960 elections. And it was him that set up the first Senate subcommittee on Africa. Here again, it may appear that they were in favor of African independence. And even after he was elected, G. Menon Williams, who was Secretary of State for African Affairs, was even using the Garveyite terminology of Africa for the Africans. But it was very, very hollow. in regard to what they were saying, because this same G. Menon Williams, who used to be the governor of the state of Michigan, um, uh, was the one who wrote the memo to the White House in 1965 in regard to Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's book, Neocolonialism, The Last Stage of Imperialism, saying the book was in contravention of U.S. interests in Africa. And that was done around October, November 1965. And then, of course, 4 months later, Dr. Nkrumah was overthrown with the engineering assistance of the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency and the State Department, along with some other imperialist countries as well, participated in that whole effort. So even though they were saying things like, well, we support African independence, it only meant that they supported African independence under a neo-colonial framework. And that's why they were so outraged when Nkrumah wrote that book, Neocolonialism, The Last Stage of Imperialism. So yes, the monarchy continued, and even though they had a parliamentary system as well, which they have today, it appears as if the monarchy is still dominant within Moroccan politics.
Talk so not much of a not much of a legacy that we can celebrate with the first king of Morocco post independence, Mohammed V. Talk to us about the socioeconomic legacy of Hassan II, or Hassan ben Mohammed, who ruled from February the 26th, 1961 to July 3rd, 1999. Talk to us about his socioeconomic legacy.
Well, it continued, and that's why you had protests and rebellions that have erupted periodically in the Kingdom of Morocco. And of course, the whole question of the Western Sahara was never resolved. In 1973, when Spain was contemplating an exit from the so-called Spanish Sahara. And in 1975, after the death of the Franco regime, they in fact relinquished their hold on the Spanish Sahara and delegated the authority to Mauritania as well as Morocco. By 1979, though, because of the founding of the Polisario Front and the commencement of the armed struggle around 1975, they were losing a lot of troops, the Moroccans, and the Spanish had also lost forces prior to that. So in 1979, Mauritania relinquished its claim that had been delegated by the Spanish to, they just relinquished their claim. So Morocco took up their claim and refused to grant any independence or independence process to the people in the Western Sahara. And this continued all during the 1980s. The war was raging. And of course, in 1982, the issue came up over the recognition of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, the SADR. This came up in 1982 before the Organization of African Unity, and it was split. Some people refused to participate in that summit because it was divided over whether or not to recognize the SADR as an independent state within the Organization of African Unity, and those who opposed such a move. And this stalemate lasted up until 1984, when the OAU did vote, a majority did vote to recognize the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. And of course, after that, the Kingdom of Morocco withdrew from the Organization of African Unity, said they did not want to be members because of the recognition of the SADR. This went on for many, many years before there was an effort to bring Morocco back into the then African Union.
And in terms of Hassan II's socio-economic legacy to the vast working class of Moroccans, not much you can praise him for, or
No, I mean the country is heavily reliant on tourism and also phosphate mining as well. But no, in terms of the transformation of Morocco into a modern state as it relates to its social class structure, they've still maintained largely a monarchical style of leadership. And this has caused a tremendous amount of consternation, particularly among workers in the mining industry, in the tourism industry, and also the youth, particularly the university students, because of the high unemployment rate in the Kingdom of Morocco is estimated to be somewhere around 35%. So there are a lot of young people and others who are unemployed, and they are quite angry about the fact that no real progress is being made inside the Kingdom of Morocco.
Well, that's a perfect segue then to this question. So Morocco is currently under under the kingdom leadership of Mohammed bin Hassan, Mohammed VI. How do you assess his time in office so far? If we look at just the socio-economics, and of course things have uh-oh. And things haven't improved so much for the people of Western Sahara under under his rule. But yeah, talk to us about Mohammed VI. How do you assess his time in office? If we just look at the domestic socioeconomics of the people of Morocco.
Yes, there's still a lot of unrest inside the country. The country is largely dependent upon tourism as an industry. It's, very dependent. Thousands upon thousands of people every year travel there from Europe and the United States to engage in, their tourism operations there. But it has not improved the conditions of the working people, the young people, and the farmers of the Kingdom of Morocco. And that is the main problem that has existed. Even during the period of the so-called Arab Spring in 2011, there were unrests which erupted in Morocco as well, people demanding reforms and the move towards more of a democratic system inside the country. And that continues up until today.
Yeah,
Just earlier this year, there were huge demonstrations that took place, largely led by young people in Morocco demanding reforms. The fact that you have even civil servants who feel that they don't have adequate securities, adequate salaries, and promises of tenure within their employment. School teachers, for example, have protested over the years in regard to their inability, the monarch's inability to grant permanent jobs to the teachers inside of Morocco. So this is an ongoing problem for them. They claim that after the unrest and after it was crushed, by the security forces, that reforms would be made, but that remains to be seen. This is not the first time that there have been outbreaks outbreaks of rebellion and unrest inside of the Kingdom of Morocco. Also, the SADR question still continues. There was a ceasefire declared in 1991 in lieu of the United Nations resolution, which mandated that UN monitored multi-party elections should be held in the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, which is heavily supported by the Algerian government.
yeah.
That has not been carried out. It's been constantly postponed. And then with the readmission of the Kingdom of Morocco into the African Union, which took place several years ago under great controversial debates and struggles. And then, of course, with the support for the ongoing Moroccan occupation of the Western Sahara, the US, as I mentioned, and other territories such as Spain and France have backed what they call a autonomy proposal that has been floated by the Kingdom of Morocco, which would not grant independence, but would grant some form of autonomy. But that has been rejected by the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic over the last several years. So
Yes.
the The ceasefire was halted by the Sahrawi Arab Liberation Army, the armed wing of the Polisario Front. And, war is continuing, not at the same level, but they consider themselves still at war with the Kingdom of Morocco. That is the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic.
And let's talk a bit about Morocco's foreign policy. Who was and but I do actually want to return. Well, my final question, I'm definitely going to return back to when we talk about the socioeconomic legacy of the current king of Morocco and the others. But who was Morocco? But before we do that, who was Morocco allied with during the Cold War? Was it one of those non-aligned nations, but still leans more towards the Western imperial states and an alliance with France, the U.S., U.K., Canada, NATO, the EU? And did it have good or hostile relations when we talk about Morocco's relations with the USSR, China, Vietnam, Cuba, and the Eastern communist bloc nations? I'm very curious response.
Well, since they still have a treaty, over 200-year treaty with the United States, that should tell you a lot in regard to their foreign policy orientation. The fact that they attacked Algeria in its infancy in 1963 over a bogus claim of territorial dominance,
Yeah.
which they were defeated in that conflict, tells you even more. The fact that in 2020, they signed a normalization treaty with the state of Israel is even a greater indication that they do not have real, genuine support for the Palestinian people. Now, they claim that just because they signed a friendship treaty with the Zionist entity does not mean that they don't support Palestinian independence. Well, you can't have it both ways. You can't say, on the one hand, we want normal relations with Israel, which is an illegal settlement that was set up by the imperialists going back at least until 1917 with the Balfour Declaration. Then the vote in 1948, which established the state of Israel, excluding the Arab population there. And then the land that has been seized in the so-called Six-Day War in 1967, and also the genocidal policies that are being carried out against the Palestinians in Gaza as well as the West Bank, in all areas of the Palestinian state. And not only that, the Zionists have launched military wars, have participated in wars like the 1956 Suez Canal War. They were involved in that against Egypt. They have, of course, been involved in bombing of Lebanon, the seizure of the Golan Heights in Syria, efforts to undermine the sovereignty of Syria, which fell late last year, approximately a year ago, to an Al Qaeda organization. Now, this shows the link between these so-called jihadi or Daesh and Takfiri groups and U.S. imperialism and Zionism.
Yeah.
These groups have never attacked the state of Israel. They don't even throw a rock in that direction, let alone fire a shot towards Tel Aviv and other areas in Palestine that are totally under control of Zionism backed by the imperialist states. So for them to sign a normalization treaty, the so-called Abraham Accords, which was being advanced by the Trump administration during its first iteration, is clearly a sign that they are not in favor of the Palestinian people objectively. So yes, they still remain heavily in the Western imperialist camp. They have relations with the state of Israel. So that's a good indication that they're not progressive in regard to their foreign policy orientation.
In fact, and folks should check out, and folks should also check out the episode we did last week about Western Sahara because it's quite flabbergasting when you look at the response of the EU and the NATO member states individually and then collectively when Morocco does to Western Sahara, it's it just makes your blood it just boil it just boils the blood. So then I have to ask this question, which is how are Morocco's relations with BRICS? Does it have good individual relations with certain members of BRICS, and that will continue unless Western imperialism and its proxy sabotage it, or it's so Morocco is so tied to the Western imperialism orbit that it almost doesn't even take relations with BRICS or even individual members of BRICS seriously. I'm very curious to
No,
receive.
I don't see them joining BRICS anytime soon unless there's a change of government and a change of the political structures. They're supposed to be hosting the World Cup coming up, I believe, and there's stadiums that have a stadium had been built. A lot of expenditures in building this soccer stadium. It may have been the African Cup, and that's helped prompt and spark the demonstrations that took place earlier this year. A lot of the young people in particular and others perceive, their orientation towards tourism as being neglectful of the majority of the people inside of Morocco itself. So no, I don't see them moving in that direction towards BRICS. In terms of relations with Russia and China, they do exist, but their main allies are the U.S. and France.
And then I have to ask this question. You were already talking about Morocco and its bizarre relations with with Israel. So I just have to ask very briefly. Can you answer why is Morocco so friendly and pro Israel? Is it just because they go along with their Western imperial allies, or does it actually go deeper than that? I'm very curious to respond.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, the fact that they were the first country to sign a friendship treaty with the United States during the early phase of the United States of America, and then their close alliance with France and other Western imperialist countries since they gained independence in 1956, inevitably leads to not only a peaceful coexistence with the state of Israel, but also to the point of recognizing them as a legitimate state. This is abomination. And we look at the other kingdoms in the West Asia region. For example, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, they too have suggested that they want to go into this Abraham Accords. Even Sudan, for example, in 2020, when during the latter days of the Trump administration, the interim prime minister, Abdallah Hamdok, agreed to sign on to the Abraham Accords. And this was absurd because, first of all, he was an appointed interim prime minister. There had not been any elections to establish a legitimate government in Sudan, which is still not happened as we speak. And at the same time, the Republic of Sudan had a bill that was passed in 1958 called the Israeli Boycott Act. And that prohibited the Sudanese government from establishing relations and even conducting trade with the state of Israel. So some of these Arab and even African states who have reestablished diplomatic relations with Israel and who are not speaking out vigorously in defense of the Palestinians, or if they do, they still maintain diplomatic relations with Israel, just shows the problems that the Palestinians and the other progressive forces have to overcome on a diplomatic and foreign policy level. For example, in Ghana, just several months ago, it was exposed that they still have diplomatic relations with the state of Israel. The Israelis have an embassy in Accra, and they allowed the Israeli embassy to host an Israeli film festival in Accra, which showed films that justified the occupation and the genocide against the Palestinians. This is the government in Ghana, which has opened its doors ostensibly to diasporic Africans to return.
Yes.
Yet they are doing these type of shenanigans, uh, even to the point of signing a secret agreement with the Trump administration to serve as a third country party destination point for illegal deportation of migrants from the United States. A number of people have been taken there, dumped in military camps, and have disappeared. The latest story is related to a woman from Sierra Leone who's never been in Ghana. She was picked up, um, handcuffed, blindfolded, straitjacketed, taken to Ghana and dumped. It's not even clear what her status is right now. So they can say that they're for Pan Africanism, they're for African diasporic people to return and get dual citizenship. Yet they're doing all these things which counter any type of progressive political orientation on a foreign policy level.
Yeah, and that's actually a very good segue to this question, which is what was Morocco's response to the North African Arab Spring and the color revolutions and later imperial, destructions of, when it comes to Egypt, Tunisia, Libya, and later Syria. And isn't it just fascinating that isn't it just fascinating that the current Tunisian government, after all that supposed people power revolution, is still very friendly with Israel and is still very much in the Western orbit with neoliberalism, the very thing which people were protesting. Egypt is now under a far right military junta dictatorship, which has just been giving concession after concession to Israel, as if Hosni Mubarak wasn't friendly enough with Israel and the West. And then Libya. I mean, we were talking off the air about the tragic destruction of Libya. It's an unstable state right now, but I'm pretty sure anybody who comes out winning is going to be very friendly with the West and with Israel, and then Syria, the only country in the region of West Asia which had its governments, overthrown and so forth. And stupid people were saying, this is the Arab Spring, the Syrian Revolution. And now, oh, look, an ISIS member, a puppet, a bootlicker of Western imperialism, and Israel has come out full swinging. So I'm very curious. So sorry to go a little bit, on the rants there, but yeah, I'm very curious. What was Morocco's response to all that social upheaval that happened in North Africa and Syria as well? Very curious for
Well, they
response.
were opposed. They were opposed, opposed to it because they were caught up in it. I mean, there were unrest and demonstrations in Morocco, but at the same time, it did not have the desired impact, just as in Egypt and Tunisia. It erupted in Tunisia, yet there was no organization, no coalition, no alliance from the left that could seize power. Power was seized by the military in both Tunisia and Egypt. So this pretty much aborted any prospects for a revolutionary transformation in those countries. And we saw what happened in Libya and in Syria. In Libya, they tried to frame a counter-revolution within the context of the Arab Spring.
Yeah,
So that was horrendous what they did, and that's why even some so-called leftists and even some Palestinian groups did not defend the Libyan group, the Libyan Jamahiriya under Muammar Gaddafi. Uh, you don't hear from those people now. They have nothing to say in light of what's going on in Libya and what's going on in Syria. Absolutely nothing, complete silence.
yeah,
Because it was an incorrect position to take. And these countries are worse off today, particularly Libya and Syria, than they were under the Jamaharia and under the United Arab Republic of Syria. So that just goes to show that unless you have some type of organized force, organization, a national liberation movement, a leftist party, or even an alliance that's led, by left and progressive forces, it is futile. These rebellions have led nowhere except back into the Western neocolonial camp.
And I'm very and then that being said, what's been Morocco had really came out unscathed. Just because there were also there were protests in I believe there were protests in Bahrain, and then there, of course, Yemen as well,
Yemen, yeah,
which we can't get into, but some kind of a left-leaning progressive force, has come out in Yemen, which is why they've been so brutally bombed and genocided and embargoed
exactly.
by the West's proxy.
Hmm.
Saudi Arabia and the Saudi Arabia and the UAE. But Morocco more or less came out very unscathed during the West Asian, North African spring. And why? Yeah, I'm very curious. Why do you think that is? Because Hosni Mubarak, of course, collapsed. The Tunisian government,
Under Ben Ali,
yeah,
yeah,
very pro-French, very, very Western-oriented. They all collapsed, and yet somehow that did not happen with the Kingdom of Morocco. I'm very curious. Why do you think that is?
well, they were able to suppress the demonstrations during that time period. So it really didn't threaten or seriously threaten the monarchy, just like the demonstrations that took place several months ago. They were noted, they were significant, but they were not able to take control or prompt a change of government in the Kingdom of Morocco.
It's in that, and now is that because the West, of course, Hosni Mubarak was out. There was the brief period of the Muslim Brotherhood, and then they got ousted, and now it's this far right military dictatorship uh, under
Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, yeah.
exactly under Sisi. Syria now, of course, is under the control over this disgusting man, Al Jalani, and when there were protests, in Bahrain and the other Gulf states, they were very quickly, just suppressed. And so is the reason why the Kingdom of Morocco has managed to not be overthrown, and certainly no left revolution has has come about yet? Is that simply because the West just has not found a plan B for Morocco if that was to happen, and ergo, you know, we cannot allow it to become a republic, and certainly not a left-leaning republic that says to the West, you guys aren't we're no longer going to be aligned with you, and if we are, there's going to come with strings attached. Is that, yeah? So I'm very curious your response to that, because it is
Yeah,
quite
I'm sure.
fascinating how the Kingdom of Morocco has managed to sustain itself.
Well, they probably have a plan B. If the opposition grows strong enough, they probably already have people who they intend to put in place, like they did in Egypt with the military, the field marshal who took over after the collapse of Mubarak, Hosni Mubarak. So I'm sure they do not want Morocco to go the way of any other revolutionary government that has come into being over the last several decades.
And what's been the Moroccan government's response to the anti-French African Spring that's been happening specifically in West Africa?
It's negligible. I have not heard about any attempt to break relations with France, the United States, or any other Western imperialist country. They're very much in the Western imperialist camp.
Wow. And and then final question. Very curious your response to this. Does Morocco have a strong left wing movement, left wing opposition to the ruling kingdom and their political cronies? Actually, yeah, yeah. Actually, answer that first.
Yeah, I mean, there are left forces there and secular forces there, but they do not have a substantial base to bring about any type of transformation of the government or the political system there. So that is something that has to develop, and perhaps it will develop as the conditions worsen for the majority of the people inside the monarchy. There, they have a mixed system. They say they're not an absolute monarchy because they do have a parliament and they do have civilian governmental structures. But at the same time, I think the highest authority inside the country, is safe to say, is still the monarchical hierarchy of leadership.
And any closing thoughts on how the various spontaneous protests against the social injustices that do plague Morocco, and they sometimes spark huge protests against the capitalism and aristocracy that largely governs Morocco, and explain how whatever grievances and injustices that exist in Morocco, socialism, Marxism, Pan Africanist leftism, Pan Middle Easternist, West Asian leftism is the only way forward to advance, decent livelihoods and the well-being of the vast majority of the working class in Morocco. Very curious to respond.
Yeah, I agree with that. But it's a process that has to unfold. And like I said, as the conditions worsen for the majority of the people in Morocco and the weakening of the diplomatic status of the state of Israel will have an impact on the monarchies in North Africa, uh, which is Morocco, and also in West Asia, meaning the people who were involved in the Gulf Cooperation Council and others. So as the international struggle escalates, as the internal resistance to the state of Israel inside of Palestine itself, as well as throughout the entire region, that will put pressure on these pro-Western regimes, and they will eventually be brought down.
Uh, Final question. This is a bonus question, and I'm very curious about this. Uh, a lot of Moroccans do express, Moroccan, I think reactionary nationalism when it comes to Western Sahara, and I'm pretty sure if I was to meet a lot of the Moroccans who are half Belgian and make up a large, community in Belgium and so forth. I'm pretty sure a lot of them would be very, supportive of Morocco's ongoing colonization of Western Sahara. But when it comes to the left of Morocco, which a lot of them very brutally suppressed by the Moroccan deep state and the Moroccan kingdom. Do a lot of them express support for self determination of Western Sahara, or are a lot of them also very nationalistic, but are mature enough to say, well, if a left wing revolution was to ever come to Morocco and we speak in power, we will at least give the people of Western Sahara a referendum on whether they want to stay part of Morocco or, go their own separate ways.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but if they're genuine revolutionaries, they have to recognize the right to self-determination of oppressed nations. And the former Spanish Sahara and the Western Sahara and the SADR are an oppressed nation. So if they're genuine revolutionaries, they would have to agree, at least for a referendum to be held in the Western Sahara to determine its future.
Fascinating. Well, we were joined on this edition of One Plus One, our All Things Africa edition, learning about Morocco with our always brilliant returning champion, the historian, journalist, and Pan-Africanist leftist and anti-imperialist and friend to all people power movements, Abayomi Azikiwe of Pan-African Newswire and Black Agenda Report. Subscribe to both outlets and donate generously to them. And please, folks, share widely all of One Plus One's content. Donate generously if you can. And the next country we'll be exploring is the long-awaited and often talked about Algeria. So looking forward to that, especially I'm looking forward to learning about Algeria after its war of liberation, which is often criminally ignored. So do join us next week for that as our exploration of North Africa and the rest of the continent continues next week. Have a great weekend, folks. All my best. Good night and good luck. And take care until then. Oh, and folks, Recently, Rachel Small, who has been a guest on the program, Rachel Small of World Beyond War, who runs the Canadian branch, she recently and I believe four other comrades were arrested by the Canadian states for a lot of action they've been doing against weapon sales to Israel and so forth. I'm going to link into our notes, into the pinned comment section where people can donate to their legal defense. And do get in touch with World Beyond War at worldbeyondwar.org on how folks can, can help out Rachel and the other comrades. Until then, good night and good luck, Abayomi. Thank you, thank you as always, and looking forward to next week.
You're most welcome.